Good morning, y'all. This is Brian, the old Piedmont gardener. Glad to have you back with us. This morning, I'm out in the garden. We've been doing a little cultivating before it gets too awful hot. That sun's coming up. We're in June. It's the second week of June, and it's starting to warm up in the Piedmont of North Carolina. I'm in Zone 7, so a lot of things are starting to progress in the garden. And one of those things that we're going to talk about today is a walking onion. Now, last year, I was in a supply house, and a friend of mine, Mr. Danny, he came in, walked up to me and handed me a little bag that had some of these bulbs in it that looked like some kind of alien onion. Danny told me that they were Egyptian walking onions, and he told me how to plant them. And I'm going to show you what I did and the results that I've got from planting these onions. Now, this right here is what Mr. Danny handed me last year when we met. And as you can see, it looks like I guess a cluster of onions. And he had them broken off of the stem here. And they had started to dry. I think they was a little farther along than these are. And he told me just to bring them home and break them apart and stick them in the ground. So that's what I did. I brought them home, and knowing that they were somewhat unusual, I decided that I was going to build a little box to put them in, sort of protect them, remind me of where they were at. And so I took some 2x4s and I made a box, just a rudimentary box to set on the ground. I put some amended soil and some compost in the box, and then I just stuck the little boogers down in the ground and hoping that they would come up. Well, it wasn't long, 2 or 3 weeks maybe, before I seen the little onions start coming out of the ground. And they were coming up about the same time as my garlic. And they grew up, you know, a little bit, not a whole lot. They was 6-8 inches tall at the most. And like my garlic, they just sort of sat there over winter. Well, in the springtime, when the weather warmed up, here come these onions. They was coming out of the ground. Now, these were some pretty onion plants. When they come out of the ground, when that weather warmed up, man, they shot up. And pretty greenery, some of the prettiest onion tops you ever seen. So in the springtime, me and Michelle would come out here and we would cut some of the side leaves off these onions, and we'd take them in the house and dice them up real fine, put them in our salads. They had a real good flavor, just like what you'd expect from a green onion. After a while, just like any other plant that's been in the garden, they started to look a little bit ragged. And I noticed that there's a central stem that come up on these things just like a garlic scape. Now, that central stem on the top of it, it produced something that looked similar to a garlic scape. But when it busted open, it kept getting bigger and bigger till it busted open. And when it busted open, instead of having the little flowery seed head like you're used to seeing in the allium family, it had all those little bitty teeny tiny sets. And each one of them little teeny tiny sets had a little bitty onion starting to grow out of it. The longer I waited, the more it split open. Eventually the paper on the top of it sort of disintegrated, and you were left with what I just showed you. Now, let's take a look at the onion bed after 1 year's growth. Well, not quite a year, but 1 season's growth from the fall to the spring, and see what we've got with these walking onions. Now, as you can see, these onions, they've done pretty good. I don't recall giving them any fertilizer. I might have put a little bit of pre-plant in there, I can't remember. But they've shot up out of the ground. All the side leaves have died back, and what you're left with is this stem that's got these onion sets on it. What you want to do, we're going to take these onion sets off the plant, and we're going to replant them. Now, I've not decided to harvest any of the bulbs that's under the ground on these onions. And the reason that I haven't done that, these onions will die back this fall. And then next year, they're going to do it again. From my understanding on these walking onions, if you leave that bulb in the ground, next year it's going to grow up. You're going to have the side leaves to harvest. Or you could harvest the bulb. But just remember, if you harvest that mother plant, if you harvest that bulb, then that's the end of that particular onion. It's not going to grow back. It's not going to do anything else. So, what I'm trying to do, my goal with these walking onions, is to get a big enough bed of the walking onions to where, say I've got this little bitty tiny bed. It's probably 18 inches by 24 inches. If I can expand that bed, and I think I can with all the top shoots that I've got, if I can expand that bed and make it a 8 by 12, then I'm going to have enough of these walking onions to where I can actually start harvesting the entire plant, the bulb, the top. We could eat on a third or a half, if not more. And what's remaining, what we don't eat, we're not eating a seed, so to speak. We'll have enough to replant that bed every year. Now, it's going to be a little trial and error to find out just exactly how much I can harvest. But if we get to that stage with these onions, then I can pull a portion of the onions before they do this little magic with the top here. We can peel them, we can chop them up, we can freeze them, we can eat them in salads, we can eat them with beans and cornbread. And we'll have some to harvest and some for seed. So with all that being said, my goal is to propagate and not consume what I've got. So what we're going to do today, I'm going to scratch out a little place here, and we're going to expand the bed of walking onions. Now, one thing that we need to talk about these onions, as you can see here, well, let me just go ahead and cut this one off. I'm going to take my trimmers here, my pruners, if I can get them open. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this one off. Now, right now, this little old onion, these little onions on the top, they're feeding off this stem. That stem's connected to the mother plant. The energy's going to the bulb down in the ground up the stem to create these. After a while, this stem is just going to fall over. Let me grab another one. Now you can see that this one is fell over. The stem's starting to get ragged, and the nutrition, you can see that it's turning white. And y'all guys will have to excuse my fingers. I had to do some repairs on an old tiller, and well, I've got a little stained up, but anyway, as you can see, it's starting to get white spots. The nutrition that's moving from the bulb in the ground to this head, that's starting to go away. That's that's about over with. Now, if we wait, the onion sets herself, this is going to die out completely and turn brown. And if we wait, we can let that turn brown. But based on my research, what I've been cautioned about is, if these onion sets, if they dry out, say they don't fall over and hit the ground. See, this plant, the way it grows with these long stems, as the plant grows and it dies and it goes through its life cycle, this can fall over and hit the ground. If that happens, these little boogers right here, they'll just go ahead and root right on their own. And that's why they call them a walking onion. You've got your bulb, it grows a stem that falls over, it re-roots, and so forth and so on. And they're walking along in that regard. But back to what I was saying, if we wait too long and these don't find a place to where they can germinate, where they can get to growing, then they'll dry out and they won't produce anything. This type of onion, these little sets right here, because they're so small and the type, you can't store them. I can't put these in a bag and wait till next year to plant them. They'll just be dried out. They'll just be compost at that point. So what we want to do, when they start falling over, in my opinion, is the best time to take them. We're going to put them in the ground and we're going to expand their bed. So to start this process, I'm just going to trim these off. And I've got just an old coffee container down here. I'm going to place them in that coffee container. I'm afraid with the color of them that if I don't put them in something, then I'll lose some. And I don't know if that's a terrible thing. They'll probably come up as long as I lose them on the ground. But let's get them trimmed off. And I'm going to find all my onion sets. Look at this one. This one's sort of an oddball. It grew up and it made a set right there. And then that set went on and made another set of some little tiny ones. I've heard that they call them tree onions as well, so that may be part of it. This one's done the same thing. It's made a couple, and then it's went on to make a couple more. So I'm gonna get all these trimmed off, and then I'll be right back with you. Okay, so I've set us up a little table. And I went and got me a bucket, put all them onions in there. So I'm gonna dump them out now and see what we've got. So when Mr. Danny give me them onions, like I said, he give me this right here. And when I broke them apart, my original planting, I did give a handful, well, a couple of them to Matt. But my original planting out here was about 24. This particular top has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Looks like about 12 on this piece. And then we got 2 more there, that's 14. And then we got some little bitty ones here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that one onion give me as much of these seedlets, these sets, whatever you want to call them, as what I started with. So by the time I go through all these and separate them and get to all the sets, you can see how prolific these onions are. So here we go. Here's what we got. We're going to take and pull that little set off of that cluster. Just pop them off. Real easy. Well, that one's not so easy. But we're going to pop them off. We're going to break them apart. Getting them broke off. Trying to make sure that I don't miss any. Got some little tiny ones here. They'll grow. The little tiny ones I planted last year certainly did. So we've essentially got all the bulbs off the onions. Now this right here can go in the compost pile. Break another one, there's 2. Bunch of little bitty ones. There's some nice big ones. These little ones, they're a little, well, they're not harder to break apart, but harder to get in there and see. You can see that looks like there was a few little flowers on that one, almost like a garlic, but there's a bunch of them little tiny sets in there to go along with it. So we'll get those out and discard the rest. You can see that some of these, the set itself has already started to grow. So when I put it in, I'll just leave it just like that. All right, we've got them all broke apart, and you talk about a bunch of little onions. I've got some pretty good sized ones, and then I've got some little bitty tiny fellers, but I think they'll all grow. So what I think I'm gonna do, because I've got so many, more than I anticipated having, and I've cut some off and gave away to friends and neighbors. But because I have so many, I think, like these old big ones, we call that big for a bulblet, I'm gonna go ahead and get them in the garden with you. And these ones that are teeny tiny, see if I can get one out and show you. Hard to even for me to even hold it, it's so small, but a little tiny onion like that. I think I'm gonna put them in some pots, maybe some 6-inch pots or maybe 4-inch pots. I think I'm gonna put a few of them in each pot and let them grow. And then if I've got somebody in the future that wants some, then I'll have some more to give away. That's one of the fun things about this onion. It's so prolific, and it's sort of neat. It's different. Giving them away is part of the fun. Let me get the soil back here cultivated. Decide whether I'm going to try to build another raised bed or just maybe come back and line that bed later. But let me decide what I'm going to do there, and I'll show you how to put these onions in the ground. Every time I go over there, I just keep finding more of them. All right, guys. Now, it's time to get dirty. You can see I've already got started. And what I've done here, you see my little raised, well, it ain't even a raised bed. My little barrier here that I've made, I extended it on out about 5 more feet. I had some old wood that was laying around from another project, and so I cultivated the soil, picked out most of the weeds, and I've extended my bed. Now, this is not a raised bed. It's not intended to be a raised bed. These onions, they're so prolific. Just remember, they're so prolific. If they touch the ground, they're going to grow. So all this is absolutely unnecessary. What this is for me, is so that I remember that I've got my onions here, and I don't accidentally do something that would disturb them once I get them in the ground. So let me grab these onions. Now when you look at these onions, you're going to see that you've got a stem end, a pointed end, and you're going to have a root end. We want to make sure that we put the root end down. I suspect that if you just throw this on the ground, it's going to grow. But if you put that root end down, you're going to give it just a little bit of a head start. All right, so I've got my bucket here. All I'm going to do is take this little onion, and I'm going to just put him right here in the dirt. And I like to give mine about 3 inches spacing. We're just going to keep sticking them in the dirt. We'll plant the big ones and the little ones. The smallest ones I probably won't, naturally I won't grab those as I go through the bucket, and I've already told you what we're going to do with them later on. I'm coming across, you see that these old big ones that's already been here, they're a little bit in my way, but not too bad. coming right along, just sticking them in. I like to put mine in sort of a pattern, but it really don't matter. As long as you give them enough room to grow, they're going to be happy and come up, grow for you. This dirt is loose and I can just poke these things in with my fingers. If you had a little different soil type, you might want to use some kind of stick. Alright guys, so that's all there are to it. These Egyptian walking onions pretty much take care of themselves. Now, I have not fertilized, other than maybe a little pre-plant fertilizer. I've not fertilized these onions. My other onions, my garden onions, F1 Candy hybrids that I grow every year, I really lay the fertilizer to them. But these onions here have not seemed to need fertilizer, so you can do what you want to there. I think a little bit of water soluble 20-20-20 will hurt them, but I'll bring you back later on. We'll do a walkthrough through the garden. My suspicion is on these onions, before fall, they're probably going to be pretty big. And I understand that if they don't winter over, they don't make the seed heads. But that's a lot of green onions we can cut. Like I said, as long as you leave the original bulb in the ground, you can harvest. If you cut the center stalk, then you ain't going to get the bulbils. But I don't think you're going to kill the onion. It'll just keep growing back. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, this is a Piedmont Gardener. Y'all have a good day.